Okay, good.
Yeah.
Rosh, Hashanah, and Kippur, this next melody, he says, if you believe that we have the power to pervert, then believe with equal strength that we have the power to set things right. It's a bit of a tongue twister, and we'll take it into the going fairly quickly. Im atama amin, she'echolim lekaker tanim, tanim she'echolim letakim. Im atama amin, she'echolim lekaker tanim, tanim she'echolim letakim. Im atama amin,
ecstasy in song. And the nigunim that Chana has been showing us and teaching you over the years, are called nigunei dvekut, the melodies of dvekut. And it's that word, that idea, that experience that I want to explore with you briefly as we prepare for Havdalah. And if you turn to page 3 in the tablet, there's some quotations on this beautiful mystical notion of dvekut. Last night we talked about two words, Shekhinah and Kabbalah. And this is one other word, dvekut. The root davak, in modern Hebrew, devek means glue, or paste, and dvekut means sticking, clinging, cleaving to God. It's really the best term for mystical union in the Kabbalah. But what's wonderful is that it's actually a mitzvah in the Torah. You know, people talk about what makes you religious. In the Orthodox world, it really comes down to Shabbat and Kashrut. Right? If you keep Shabbat, if you keep kosher, then those are the basic commandments. But of course, there are many other mitzvot. Altogether, there are 613 mitzvot. And one of the mitzvot is to cleave to God. It's actually a mitzvah. It's not some mystical innovation. It's not some chidush, some newfangled discovery of the medieval Kabbalists. It's right there in the Torah. And I want to begin by looking at that verse. But actually, we'll begin number 1 on page 3 with an earlier verse, the first time that this root davak, to cling, to attach, first time it appears is in Genesis. Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother, the davak be'ishto, clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. So the first time the word appears in the Bible, it's about union, physical union, sexual union, human union, and then it becomes the term for union with God. As Maimonides says, you should be as much in love with God as you're in love with your spouse, as you're in love with your beloved. So there's a connection between human passion for another human and human passion for God. And this word davak, applies to both. Look at number 2. This is from Deuteronomy. For if you indeed keep all this command that I charge you to perform, to love Yehovah your God, to walk in all his ways, uledav kavo, to cleave to him. Okay, keep the commandments, walk in God's ways, and attach yourself to God. It's not some medieval invention, it's right there in the Torah. In fact, the next time you're talking with someone about being religious, right, in Israel, this comes up all the time, are you religious? Are you religious or are you not religious? And usually it comes down to, as I said, Shabbat and Kashrut. The next time you're in a discussion with anyone about what it means to be religious, say, well, do you cleave to God? So that's a part of the definition of being religious, to take this mitzvah seriously. Now the rabbis wondered, is it really possible to cleave to God? The Torah says it, but the rabbis wonder if it's possible or not. Look at number 3. This is from the Talmud. Quotes a verse in Deuteronomy, another verse that uses the same word, davak. This verse we know because it's in the Torah service. You cleaving to Yehovah your God are alive, every one of you today. V'atem ha'devekim b'Adonai Elohechem. Really cleaving. What's the Hebrew? Divukim mamash. You probably have heard that word over the years. It's a favorite word of the Hasidic text. Mamash, really. So why did they say really? Because there must have been some rabbis who said, you can't really. You can't really cleave. And this rabbi says, no, you can really cleave. Now, why were some rabbis uncomfortable with that idea of cleaving to God? Because of the next passage, number 4. And to cleave to him. Okay, it comes a number of times in Deuteronomy. Probably 5 or 6 times. It says, cleave to God. You are cleaving to God. Now, can a human being ascend on high and cleave to fire? How can you really cleave to God? God is fire. Isn't it already written, for Yehovah your God is a consuming fire? And similarly, his throne flames of fire? However, cleave to the wise and to their disciples, and I will consider it as if you ascended on high and obtained. So this rabbi is saying, what? You can't cleave to God. The Bible says cleave to God. This rabbi says, can you really cleave to God? God is a blazing fire. You'll be destroyed if you get that close to the divine. So what does it mean to cleave to God? It means cleave to your rabbi. Only one person, right? Is it really possible to cleave to your rabbi? But what that means is, devote yourself to your rabbi, support your rabbi, right? Revere your rabbi, honor your rabbi, learn from your rabbi, learn from the wise, and that's as close as you can get to God. I'm going to look at two more Greek ones and then sing a little more nigunim. Number 5 is similar, to love Yud-Heh-Vav your God and to cleave to him. They begin by quoting the verse in the Torah that says you should have Dvekut, but look, the same rhetorical question. In Hebrew, V'chi efshar. Is it really possible? Now, is it possible for a human being to cleave to Shekhinah? Okay, in the rabbinic text, Shekhinah and God are one and the same. We're not talking here about the feminine half, the masculine half. Shekhinah means simply God. Can you really cleave to Shekhinah? However, whoever marries his daughter to a scholar, or engages in business for scholars, or benefits scholars from his possessions, is considered by the Torah as if he cleaves to Shekhinah. The same for the same idea. Shekhinah is a fire. You can't connect directly to God. Support the wise. Okay, it's not cleave to God, but give her a good salary. Support the wise, support the chachamim, and that's as close as you can get to God. And one more before we return to ecstatic singing. Also from the Talmud, number 6. Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Chanina, said, what is meant by the verse, after Yud-Heh-Vav your God shall you walk? Okay, and the verse goes on, and to him you shall cleave. Again, the rhetorical question, V'chi efshar? Now, is it possible for a human to walk after Shekhinah? How can you get that close to Shekhinah? Has it not already been said, for Yud-Heh-Vav your God is a consuming fire? However, this means to walk after, to follow the attributes of the Blessed Holy One. Okay, what we're going to close with this evening, the 13 attributes of God. God is compassionate, God is loving, God is gracious, God is forgiving. Imitate God. That's how to cleave to God. You can't touch God, you burn up. Imitate God's attributes. As he clothed the naked, so shall you clothe the naked. The Blessed Holy One visited the sick, so shall you visit the sick. The Blessed Holy One comforted mourners, so shall you comfort mourners. The Blessed Holy One buried the dead, so shall you bury the dead. Okay, we'll pause here in the study before we come to the Kabbalistic notion. Up to here we've had the idea, cleave to God, that's impossible. Rather you should support Torah, you should imitate God, and then it's as if you had to live through.
The reason that we sing the Dvekut at this particular time on Shabbat is because there's a sense that we will soon be losing the closer connection that we have with God on Shabbos. And this is called the Eid Ratzon, the period of attenuated desire to get close. Here is a nigun taken from Psalm 63. I await you in the holy place to behold your might and your glory. My soul is parched for you. My flesh rises to you in yearning. Number 3. In Bakodesh, Chaziti, Chaliro, Uzchau Kodesh. In Bakodesh, Chaziti, Chaliro, Uzchau Kodesh.
So is it really possible to cleave to Shekhinah? The rabbis seem to think that that's too much to imagine, that we would be destroyed by that contact. But look at how the Kabbalah responds at page 5. This is from someone who lived right around the time of the Zohar, a Kabbalist named Joseph Jikatilla. He has a book called Sha'arei Ora, The Gates of Light. Top of page 5. Again, he begins by quoting a verse from Deuteronomy. Him shall you serve, and to him shall you cleave. Shall you cleave? Undoubtedly. As to what the rabbis have said, may their memory be a blessing. It's always good to say that before you disagree with someone. Is it possible for a human being to cleave to Shekhinah? Efshar ve'efshar. It certainly is. V'chi efshar, is it really efshar? Is it really possible? Look at the Hebrew, the last two words of that paragraph in the Hebrew. Efshar ve'efshar. It certainly is possible. So he had the experience of the Dveikut, and he disagrees with what the Talmud said. The Talmud said, is it possible? It's a rhetorical question, right? For him, it's not a rhetorical question. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. So from his experience of Dveikut, he's able to give a new interpretation of Judaism. But what is he doing? He's really going back to the Pshat. The simple meaning of Deuteronomy is cleave to God. The rabbis say that's too much to imagine. The Kabbalists say no, you can actually imagine and even experience it. Just the first line of number 8. The essence of the service of the enlightened and of those who contemplate his name is, to him shall you cleave. That's the essence of worshiping God, to cleave to God. It's not just to fulfill the mitzvot, it's to have the experience of union. Since we're coming very close to Havdalah, let's just conclude with the last one on page 6, number 10. Beautiful verse of Psalms from the very beginning of the Shabbat Shacharit service from Psalm 34. Taste and see that God is good. Ta'amu u'ra'u ki tov Adonai. And you wonder, what does it mean? Taste what? Taste and see that God is good. Apparently it means taste God. Taste God and you'll see that God is good. The soul will cleave to the divine mind. Again, the root davak. And he will cleave to her. Okay, the soul is feminine here. The divine mind masculine. The soul will cleave to God, to the divine mind. He will cleave to her. For more than the calf wants to suck, the cow wants to suckle. More than we are yearning for God, God is yearning for us. She and the mind, the soul and the divine become one thing, like pouring a jug of water into a gushing spring, for all becomes one.
The last melody is the Rasnigan, which is actually a niggin for cleaving that is traditionally sung at weddings, sung at our wedding. And I invite you to just put your papers down and close your eyes and just take it in. Mama, Invite Laura to lead us in Hashanah.
Sod HaHavdalah, a secret of Havdalah. Havdalah teaches that by cleaving to the community, we create the conditions that make it possible for each individual to cleave to the Holy One. How does Havdalah communicate that? I will explain. It's the holy, the Kodesh, from the whole, the ordinary. Shabbat, the holy day of rest, ends, and the challenges of ordinary life rush back in. And you, Holy One, give us the tools to face those challenges. But this week, as Shabbat ends, it's not an ordinary week that rushes back in. It's an extraordinary week. It's the last week of preparation for an enormous community celebration, Rosh Hashanah, the new year. It is an all-staff, all volunteers, all hands on deck week. Everyone working together to create just the right space for teshuvah, reflection, repentance, and return. So tonight, when we chant the phrase Hamavdil ben Kodesh lechol, the word chol cannot possibly mean ordinary, because that's not what's coming. So here's another way to think about it. Maybe tonight, chol hints at God's promise to our ancestor Avraham. God says to Avraham, Lech lecha, go deep into yourself, and then harba arbe et zaracha, kachol asher al sfat hayam. Kachol asher al sfat hayam. I will make your descendants as abundant as the chol, the sand upon the seashore. We are the descendants. Each of us is a tiny grain of sand. Individually, we all practice teshuvah, reflection, repentance, and return. And we all practice it all the time. We set intentions, we gain insight, we develop skills. It's part of the daily spiritual path that we are all on. But this week, we do something extra. We share our intention, we share our insight, we share our skill with one another. We make time together to learn from special teachers how to go even more deeply into ourselves. And then, together, we co-create the ritual of Rosh Hashanah, the ritual of public teshuvah. Together, we become the Chol Asher al Sfat Hayam. We become the beach where one enters a sea of possibility. Havdalah, we bless you, God. As you release us from Shabbat, you give us the strength and the skill to build our seashore and enter the sea together. Lights, Halavai. I'd like to invite Marianne, our co-organizer, to hold the Havdalah candle.
our synagogue, this sanctuary that houses our communal spiritual life, is on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, for whom it has been sacred for over 10,000 years. Thank you to all of those who have helped to make this weekend with Dr. Matt possible. Our co-sponsors, the Interreligious Studies Program of the Vancouver School of Theology, and the University of British Columbia Diamond Chair in Jewish Law and Ethics. The Phyllis and Irving Snyder Foundation, whose grant to us makes it possible for us to offer this weekend at no cost to the community. And our Shabbaton Committee of Gloria Levy, Marianne Red, Marianne Red, Rabbi Lord Kaplan, and Rabbi Hillel Goldman. And of course our staff, Shelley Wogenstein, Matthew Gindon, and Tracy Pag. As you know, Daniel Matt is visiting us from Berkeley, California, where he taught at the Graduate Theological Union for many years before beginning the 18-year project he completed last year, the 12-volume Pritzker edition of Zohar, an invaluably annotated Zohar in poetic English translation. This project is one of the great contributions to Jewish history and thought, and it is also a work that has made it possible to access a Judaism that many Jewish seekers did not know existed, supporting return to a creative, renewed Jewish spirituality, speaking to the deepest human longings. Tonight, Dr. Matt has been teaching us on cleaving to the divine, and will continue with teachings appropriate to the days of awe on what Kabbalah can teach us, how Kabbalah can help us to stimulate a renewed life of our own. The material is rich, and we're going to pause at intervals to just sit in silence, to imagine and integrate. And during these meditations, we'll just have an opportunity to return to our interbreathing with God. Our evening together will end with the foreshadowing of high holiday melodies and liturgy, and then refreshments and conversation downstairs, where Dr. Matt's books, The Essential Kabbalah, The Big God of the Big Bang, and the first volume of the Pritzker Zohar will be for sale.
Shavua Tov. Thank you for that beautiful Havdalah, Laura. And thank you, Chana, for the warm introduction and for leading us to experience Dveikut. I want to explore with you some teachings about the nature of God, awe. And I think for many people it's difficult to relate to the kind of God who's described in the Machzor, in the prayer book for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. God seems to be the Father in heaven, the judge especially, the king, the ruler, this patriarchal image of the God who's running everything up there. And I want to look at some passages in Kabbalah which paint a very different picture, really reimagining God. And we'll see how the Kabbalah does that. Starting on page 7, the nature of God. All three passages on this page are from Moses Cordovero, who lived in Sfat, in Southhead, along with Isaac Luria. I've taken these from my little paperback book, The Essential Kabbalah. Let's start with the nature of God. An impoverished person, this means mentally or spiritually impoverished, not financially. An impoverished person thinks that God is an old man with white hair, sitting on a wondrous throne of fire that glitters with countless sparks. As the Bible states, the Ancient of Days sits, the hair on his head like clean fleece, his throne flames of fire. This is quoted from the book of Daniel, Daniel's mystical description of God seated on a throne in heaven. Now, usually when a rabbi quotes a verse from the Bible, he's going to interpret it, he's going to unpack its meaning, he's going to discuss its implications. Here, why is Cordovera quoting that verse? Because he disagrees. He says they really got it wrong. He's quoting from the Bible because he thinks this is the wrong way to approach God. Look what he says. Imagining this and similar fantasies, the fool corporealizes God. He turns God into a corpus, turns God into a body. If you take this verse literally, you're going to think that God is a physical being. Then you'll fall into one of the traps that destroy faith. Your awe of God is limited by your imagination. Now, why does this destroy faith? Maybe it's an inadequate depiction of God, but at least it gives you something. Why does it say it destroys faith? Maybe because he thinks you might outgrow that conception. This is really the normal picture of God we think of growing up. And that childish view of God, if eventually you grow dissatisfied with that and you have nothing else, then you could reject God totally. So maybe that's what he means. That could destroy your faith. So what does he suggest instead? But if you are enlightened, you know God's oneness. You know that the divine is devoid of bodily categories. These can never be applied to God. Then you wonder, astonished, who am I? Okay, don't even ask who is God. Start with something more immediate. Start with something more psychological, more experiential, more accessible. Who am I? And when you come down to it, I'm pretty puny. Right? I'm a grain of sand. I'm a mustard seed. Okay, the smallest seed you can imagine. I'm a mustard seed in the middle of the sphere of the moon. Okay, we're back here in medieval astronomy. What does he mean, the sphere of the moon? It doesn't mean the moon. It means the circle the moon makes orbiting the Earth. That immense sphere, I'm like one tiny seed in the middle of that sphere. So it is with that sphere. Even that immense sphere, that's tiny in relation to the next sphere. So it is with all the spheres, one inside the other. All of them are a mustard seed within the further expanses. And all these are a mustard seed within further expanses. Your awe is invigorated. The love in your soul expands. Okay, let's translate that into contemporary science. I'm tiny compared to the Earth. But the Earth is tiny compared to the solar system. And the solar system is tiny compared to the galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy, we think of it as immense, but it's really one of at least 100 billion galaxies. So how does that necessarily give you an uplifting feeling? Why did you say your awe is invigorated? You could easily feel lost in space. But we have to come back to why is he asking that question? Because he's really wondering, what is God? Don't think of God as someone seated up there. So what is God? God is, for him, Ein Sof. God is infinity. Now infinity is not something out there. If infinity is infinite, then it includes me. It includes us. We are part of infinity. You might say each of us is one fraction of infinity. But a mathematician would tell you that a fraction of infinity is infinite. If it weren't infinite, then we could figure out how big infinity is. If we knew what a fraction of infinity was, we could figure out how big infinity is. But even a fraction of infinity is infinite. It's hard to wrap one's mind around it, but mathematicians tell me that's true. So each of us is one fraction of infinity. Each of us participates in this oneness. So we're not separate from the totality of the universe. We're part of the oneness. Einstein actually says that too. He wrote a beautiful letter in 1950 to a rabbi. Einstein wrote a letter to a rabbi. The rabbi had turned to Einstein because his son had died tragically, and he turned to Einstein to get some comfort. Hundreds of people had turned to this rabbi to get comfort. Now the rabbi needed comfort. He wrote to Einstein and said, could you give me something to hold on to? Einstein wrote back and said, we are really part of the cosmos, but we fall into an optical delusion. That's the phrase Einstein uses. Not illusion, but delusion. We have an optical delusion that we're separate from the universe. And the main purpose of religion is to put us back in touch with the oneness, with our connection to the all. I think Cordovero is saying something similar. Don't think of God as someone out there. Think of God as the oneness. We are part of that oneness, and we should use the upcoming few weeks, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, this last week of Elul, as Laura said, to prepare for that immense encounter with the cosmos, to feel that we're part of that infinite expanse. Let's look at two more briefly, and then we'll treat ourselves to a bit of meditation. The same page. I gave it this title, Non-Duality. This is from Cordovero. Look how he describes God here. The essence of divinity is found in every single thing. Nothing but it exists. Okay, this is God beyond he or she. We talked about Shekhinah, but this is really God beyond gender. So I use this pronoun it. Nothing but God exists. Since it causes everything to be, no thing can live by anything else. It enlivens them. Its existence exists in each existent. You may not have seen that word recently, but existent means simply any existing thing. Do not attribute duality to God. Let God be solely God. If you suppose that Ein Sof, here's that term, literally there is no end, for the infinite. If you suppose that Ein Sof emanates until a certain point, and that from that point on is outside of it, you have dualized, God forbid. Realize rather that Ein Sof exists in each existent. Do not say this is a stone and not God. God forbid. Rather, all existence is God, and the stone is a thing pervaded by divinity. Very striking to hear a rabbi say, don't say this is a stone and not God. But after all, what do we read in the Ten Commandments? Don't bow down to any stone. Don't bow down to any graven image. Now certainly Cordovero is not going to worship the stone, but he refuses to exclude God from the stone. The stone is animated by God. It's not even animate and inanimate. For him, even something inanimate is animated. It's really almost God as energy. Think of energy and matter. Matter cannot exist without energy. In fact, matter is a form of energy. That's what Einstein taught us. Energy is mass multiplied by an immense number. So matter, some scientists put it this way, matter is frozen energy. Matter is energy that is slowed down enough that it can temporarily take on a certain pattern, a certain structure. So for Cordovero, the stone is pervaded by divine energy, by the divine presence. So don't reject anything as being different or separate ultimately from God. By the way, what does he mean by duality? Usually duality means there's a major God and a minor God. That's not what he means. For him, duality is if you say there's God and the world. That's a mistake. That's a heretical statement. You're saying there's God and the world. God is the world. God has become the world. God is concealed in the world. Before anything emanated, there was only Ein Sof. Okay, originally there was this ocean of infinity without the world at all. Ein Sof was all that existed. Similarly, after it brought into being that which exists, there is nothing but it. So what is he saying? At the beginning, before creation, there was only Ein Sof. And what's the situation now that the world exists? There's still only Ein Sof. But Ein Sof has taken on the form of physical matter. Ein Sof is concealed in the world. You cannot find anything that exists apart from it. There is nothing that is not pervaded by the power of divinity. If there were, Ein Sof would be limited, subject to duality. Chas v'shalom. It really shouldn't be God forbid. God forbid sounds like the notion of God is trying to overcome. The Hebrew is chas v'shalom. Perish the thought. Better translation. Rather, God is everything that exists, though everything that exists is not God. Sounds a little strange. It's a Jewish koan. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. It is present in everything, and everything comes into being from it. Nothing is devoid of its divinity. Everything is within it. It is within everything and outside of everything. There is nothing but it. You really feel there the limits of language. Language can't quite do justice to what he's trying to say. So he says something and then he says the opposite. He says something and then he unsays it. Let's look at that paradoxical line toward the end. God is everything that exists, though everything that exists is not God. Maybe he means, don't be fooled into thinking that even all of existence does justice to God. Really coming back to the first line we chanted, Memale kol almin, God fills all worlds, but sovev kol almin, God transcends, God surrounds all worlds. So even the entire universe is not the totality of infinity, of God. God is beyond. There's still a transcendent notion of God. It's not limiting God to the world. God does animate everything, but all that exists is still less than the oneness. There is nothing but it.
Sink a little deeper into ourselves. Let your mind flow free for these few minutes. I'm taking what I offer as if in a dream. My words, offering images to your mind's eye, or not. Reimagining God's majesty. Olam haba, the world that's always coming, is constantly flowing towards us on a ma'or, a river of light that emanates from on high, streaming divine energy into the world, irrigating our world with a ceaseless flow of vitality and promise. Dare we dip in? The Zohar describes the Ma'or, the river from Eden, as flowing to us through the tree of life at the center of the garden. She's a tree rooted in heaven, growing downward. Her trunk, a conduit of divine energy. Sap of God. That descends and filters out into the branches of the celestial tree, branching and expanding, fork after fork, bifurcation after bifurcation, dividing again and again and again, extending her reach over the breadth of our world. Imagine, if you will, the inverted cosmic tree reflected in our earthly trees. As above, so below. And the tree of life isn't just mirrored below. It serves as a channel that connects worlds, sharing generative fluid. It's an image of undulating flow from above, coursing through our reality. Sometimes we sense it. Sometimes we don't. When we do, we might call it awe. Our awareness of God's majesty. Not king, not judge, but this. God's majesty is manifest in the world. Come and see, as the Zohar would say. come back home to the body. We will learn some more.
Let's read just a little bit more and prepare for some silence. This rhythm of words and silence is the best way to imbibe Torah. On page 8. Page 8, concealing and revealing. First paragraph, we're looking at it again from Moses Cordovero, who taught in Sfat, and then below it from another Kabbalist. When powerful light is concealed and clothed in a garment, it is revealed. Though concealed, the light is actually revealed. For were it not concealed, it could not be revealed. It's texts like these that give mysticism a bad name. But be patient, he's going to explain it. This is like wishing to gaze at the dazzling sun. Its dazzle conceals it, for you cannot look at its overwhelming brilliance. Right? The sun is too bright to see. It's so bright you can't see it. It's so bright that it's hidden. Yet when you conceal it, looking at it through screens or filters, you can see and not be harmed. So it is with emanation. By concealing and clothing itself, it reveals itself. Okay, we can't look at the sun directly, but if we filter it, if we hide it partially, then we can handle it, then we can bear it. And it's the same with God's flow. Right? Emanation is just a mystical term for the shefa, the flow. How does God flow into the world? God flows in a concealed way. So nature is a concealed form of God. Nature is God concealed. That's the only way we can handle that divine power. Think of energy and matter again. Nuclear energy is too much to bear, but if the energy slows down enough and becomes a stable pattern, taking on structure and then molecular structure, then we can hold it. Then we can handle it. And the same with God's light. God becomes the world. God, in a concealed way, is nature. The Kabbalah loves to play with the gematria, the numerical value of the word hateva, nature, and Elohim, God. Those are equal in numerical value. You add up the letters. So God is the world in a concealed form. Look at the next one. This is shorter and very beautiful. With the appearance of the light, the universe expanded. Sounds like the Big Bang. This is someone writing in the 16th century. With the appearance of the light, the universe expanded. With the concealment of the light, the things that exist were created in all their variety. This is the secret of the act of creation. V'hamevin yavin. One who understands will understand. Okay, it's only 4 lines. If we can get these 4 lines, we have the secret of creation, according to Kabbalah. But the last line just says, basically, if you get it, you got it. Okay, so we're down to 3 lines. And the 3rd line just says, this is the secret. Okay, so we're down to 2 lines. If we can get these 2 lines, we have the secret of creation, according to Kabbalah. Okay, the first line, maybe in the 16th century, that was a radical idea. Now every high school junior learns that in physics. With the appearance of the light, the universe expanded. So that's very close to the Big Bang. So the second line is really the key here. The second puzzling line. With the concealment of the light, the things that exist were created in all their variety. It sounds strange. You would imagine it should say, with the revealing of the light, things come into being. But I think he has in mind something similar to what cosmology teaches, is that if the energy was just expanding, if the energy was just flowing out at an immense speed, nothing could ever form. No galaxy would form, no star would form until that hydrogen gas slowed down enough, until gravity did its magic and started to bring the gas together, to form some structure, to form the first stars and galaxies. It's somehow the concealing of the light. In fact, the physicists would just change one letter, not the concealment of the light, the congealment of the light. When the energy congeals, when the energy slows down, when it takes shape, so when there's some border or boundary or definition, that's what allows for individual existence. Otherwise, we would just be a stream of energy. We'd just be this floating, cascading oneness. And there's something beautiful about individual existence. But individual existence requires a bit of concealment, a bit of definition and border, limitation. So I think what he means, it's that rhythm. It's the rhythm between this explosion, this expansion, and then some hiding, some structure, some limitation, some concealment. That's what allows for us to be as individuals, and yet we yearn to reconnect with that oneness. Let's reflect on that a little bit.
Let's settle again, be on the floor, grounded in our seats, closing our eyes, or softening our gaze. And let's keep it very simple this time. Some breaths for quieting our mind and relaxing our bodies. Concentrating on the breath. Breathing in the breath of life. Exhaling back into the one. Breathing in the gift of our individual, bounded bodily life. And breathing out, exhaling into the unity of all things. Taking in the holiness of animating breath. And melting back into the mystery. Ani and the ayin. I am the vessel. I am part of the all. Notice the warmth of the in-breath and bring that warmth, indeed a glow of light, through your body as sweet nourishment. Notice that you're sitting, indeed always sitting, in a nourishing glow. It's just a question of what we can take in. Sometimes we need very dark glasses. Though concealed, the light is actually revealed. For if it were not concealed, it could not be revealed. And for these few minutes, as we maintain awareness of an enlivening exchange of breath with our Creator, let's acclimate to her warming light, opening to it, Od Ma'at, Od Ma'at, a little bit more and a little bit more, so that we actually feel warmth in our bodies. What can we strip away? Come and see. With practice, we can incrementally open more blinds, disrobe of defensive or protective layers, and bask in healing, in understanding. In aliveness. Inhaling light into the bounded vessel of the self. Holding it to feel nourished. Exhaling into the one. Let's take 3 more breaths with real kavanah. And come home to the body, to community, and to our study together.
Okay, for our final brief passage of final meditation, let's turn to the next page, page 9. On the right-hand side, the greatest path, and then ripples. Page 9. This is a Hasidic teaching about raising the sparks I'm sure you've explored this theme many times. Divine sparks that are hidden within all physical existence, within each human being. This is from Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, beloved Hasidic Rebbe, the greatest path. When you desire to eat or drink, or to fulfill other worldly desires, and you focus your awareness on the love of God, then you elevate that physical desire to spiritual desire. Thereby you draw out the holy spark that dwells within. You bring forth holy sparks from the material world. There is no path greater than this. For wherever you go, whatever you do, even mundane activities, you serve God. This is really the Hasidic revolution. Holiness doesn't mean just being in the synagogue, just being in the house of study. It's in the supermarket. It's in the office. You encounter possibilities of discovering the spark in a situation, in nature, in a human encounter. And it's possible to turn the ordinary into the spectacular by becoming aware. Final passage, Ripples. This is from Moses de Leon, and it's really a description of meditation. I'd like to read it once with you, and then we'll just close our eyes, and I'll read it once, and then we'll just bask in silence for a minute or two. Thought reveals itself only through contemplating a little without content, contemplating sheer spirit. It sounds strange. What does it mean to contemplate without content? Every thought is a thought of something. But for him, this is what meditation is. To think without being fixated on a particular object. And of course, thoughts will come, as every meditation teacher says. Thoughts come, the thing is not to hold on to them, to let them go. That's what he says too. It's really impossible to keep that pure, open, clear space. The contemplation is imperfect. You understand, then you lose what you have understood. Like pondering a thought, the light of that thought suddenly darkens, vanishes. Then it returns and shines and vanishes again. No one can understand the content of that light. It is like the light that appears when water ripples in a bowl, shining here, suddenly disappearing, then reappearing somewhere else. You think that you have grasped the light when suddenly it escapes, radiating elsewhere. You pursue it, hoping to catch it, but you cannot. Yet you cannot bring yourself to leave. You keep pursuing it. It is the same with the beginning of emanation. As you begin to contemplate it, it vanishes, then reappears. You understand, and it disappears. Even though you do not grasp it, do not despair. The source is still emanating, spreading. You can't hold on to it, but that's the whole point. That it comes and goes. The divine light, the flashes, the insights, the wisdom. It comes and goes, but just sit there, because it will return. It will keep flowing. It's the world that's constantly coming. Let's meditate one last time together, and I'll just read it as we close our eyes. Thought reveals itself only through contemplating a little without content, contemplating sheer spirit. The contemplation is imperfect. You understand, then you lose what you have understood. Like pondering a thought, the light of that thought suddenly darkens, vanishes, then it returns and shines and vanishes again. No one can understand the content of that light. It is like the light that appears when water ripples in a bowl, shining here, suddenly disappearing, then reappearing somewhere else. You think that you have grasped the light when suddenly it escapes, radiating elsewhere. You pursue it, hoping to catch it, but you cannot. Yet you cannot bring yourself to leave. You keep pursuing it. It is the same at the beginning of emanation. As you begin to contemplate it, it vanishes, then reappears. You understand, and it disappears. Even though you do not grasp it, do not despair. The source is still emanating, spreading. First, we mentioned a little earlier that Divekut, for the rabbis who felt that it's impossible to attach oneself directly to that blazing divine flame, one rabbi said, well, what this means is attach yourself to the attributes, imitate the attributes. So let's keep that in mind as they're being chanted. These are divine qualities that it's possible for us to emulate and to internalize, to integrate, to attain. We can be compassionate because the divine is our source and our model. But the very last one is interesting. Notice the English here. Adonai, Adonai, the Lord, a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and good faith, keeping kindness for the 1,000th generation, bearing crime, trespass, and offense. And then we have one final additional word in the Hebrew, vinakeh, and cleansing. Maybe it means clearing the slate. God is forgiving. But actually, if you look up this verse in Exodus chapter 34, the Hebrew doesn't end with vinakeh and cleaning and cleansing. It says vinakeh lo yinakeh. As for cleaning, God does not clean. God does not forget. So the point of that line in its pshat is that God does not forgive entirely. But the rabbi said, no, that's not going to work. So they put the period after the first vinakeh and left off the does not forgive. It transformed the Bible to make it more humane, to make it more livable. And it's a beautiful model for how we can creatively play with tradition and make it real for us today.
No se
glad to all be together next weekend. And for now, let's have some treats and just greet one another and enjoy one another's company downstairs.